early on, so we're going to kick straight in. This subject here is music administration, administering, let's not use that dreadful word, administering musicians is of a lot of interest, I know, to students here. So we have three really tremendously well-known people. We're very lucky to have you in front of us today. And I think the idea is, if you can just briefly stand up, say who you are for 20 seconds, to get a quick idea. Don't worry about how you got it, but what you're doing now, that would be great. James, start with you.
Hello, I'll stand up. My name is James Calver. I am the Concerts Director of Britten Sinfonia in Cambridge. I graduated from York in music in 2007, and since then have gone through various kind of different administrative roles in the sector and out of the sector, and ended up at Britten Sinfonia. I did a junior job there in 2010 for 3 years, and I've returned 3 years ago as Concerts Director.
Sam.
I'm Sam Weatherstone. I'm Senior Programming Manager at Royal Albert Hall. I graduated here in 2011, and my main job at Royal Albert Hall is basically to promote the concerts when we're exploring that.
That's quite something, isn't it? I graduated in 2011, and I'm Senior Programme Manager at the Royal Albert Hall. So, just think what you might be doing in a few years' time. Cherry.
Well, it's 20 years since I graduated from the University of Edinburgh in music, and now I'm Finance Director and Director of Finance and Operations at the National Centre for Early Music in York. After I graduated from music, I became a chartered accountant, and that is my route into music administration.
Which of itself is very interesting, because the whole business about transferable degrees, transferable work, is something I talk about a lot when I go to schools, trying to persuade people to do music at university. Although frankly, these days with the bloody EBAC and everything, if you get to the stage that you're already doing music at A-level, that's so unlikely, and already shows a lot of interest in music. But you can always transfer. Yes, we want you to go out being creative types and make things and do music, but there are all sorts of other things you can do as well. You should do music because you want to do it as a degree. You can do law and transfer to music. All these things are possible. So we're going to talk about different ends of the business. You've got someone here who's two people who are venue-based, and one person who is based working with one ensemble. And I'm just going to stick myself a little bit on this, just because I've been doing music admin for 30 years as well. But I want to talk, and there's something really interesting happening. Very good. James, will you start?
Yes.
And would you stand to speak?
Of course, yes. I stand up. I might sort of lean, actually, because I prefer to lean rather than sit down. Hello, I'd like to say what a pleasure it is to be here talking to you in this capacity, because I don't think 10 years ago, when I was sat in this room with John Potter or whoever it was doing 17th century opera in context, or whatever the course was, I couldn't have imagined I would be back here talking in this capacity now as Concerts Director of Britten Sinfonia. I wasn't even an orchestral musician, it's worth saying. I'm a classical saxophonist, lapsed, so a bit of an enigma. I never had any performance desires or aspirations. I think the minute I set foot in this department, I realised where the standard was, and felt, from the point of view of my performance skills and skill base, quite mediocre. And some of you may have had that feeling as well, almost week 1 and 2 sort of crisis in first year, and continuing. And carving your groove, I should imagine, has been a big part of your time at York so far, because that's the good thing about this place, is that you can find that channel which to apply your skills and develop them to. And actually, I did find that while I was here, to an extent, which, administratively on certain projects, and, working on a practical project, for instance, in my 3rd year, from a much more of a producer production point of view. At which point I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I certainly didn't understand the facets of the industry, particularly in relation to ensemble management. And I couldn't have ever considered, I didn't even know, how violin desks divided. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I just didn't know at that point until I was actually having that education in situ. It was largely down to my own self-promotion, really. After university, I went back to live with my mum and dad. They'd never studied at university before, so they didn't really have that kind of idea of concept of how you build a career after finishing at university. So any advice I might have gleaned from them was more life than actual career advice. I learned to drive after finishing at university, a vital skill for a lot of jobs, which is, you might take it for granted, but actually you don't. It's very helpful to have that mobility. I then gained some administrative experience just locally, because while I was doing that, I was learning to drive, needed to afford to pay for it. I could do it in my local hometown in Suffolk. And I did that probably for the best part of the year, public sector administration. And I think it's very worthwhile saying how useful administration experience is generally, even down to things like answering the phones, how to use Outlook packages, access, things like that. You're probably quite familiar with from your time here, but there is a whole etiquette, an office etiquette, that is useful when you actually come to apply those skills later on in a music administration role. I volunteered during this time at the local authority 1 day a week with the Arts Service because I really wanted to gain some relevant experience in the area. I did that 1 day a week and it was multidisciplinary. It was producing some marketing pamphlets and things for local events, arts programmes in the district for the local authority. And then I had what I call the Dick Whittington syndrome, which was going to London because I fancied, I thought I've got a year's worth of experience, I'm going to go to London without a job, I'll pick something up. I was applying for everything I could, all of the administrative roles that I could at the front of house at the Barbican, South Bank Centre, assistant jobs at London Sinfonietta, other ensembles, basically just a scattergun approach. Tell me if I'm talking too much. I don't know what the time is. I'll keep going, I can talk. So I went for the scattergun approach and got nothing. I ended up being unemployed for 3 months, albeit living with a friend in London. All my savings from that year just dribbling away on London life, as you can imagine. And eventually I took a job in the NHS as an admin clerk because I had some experience. It was in estates and facilities for the West London Mental Health Trust. And sometimes it was difficult to tell the difference between the patients and the staff. It was so just difficult, and the NHS is difficult, and it taught me that I can't ever do this. I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I sort of went head in hands back home to mum and dad, and they'd said, we can support you. They didn't have a lot to be able to support me other than a roof and board. And they supported me in an internship, an unpaid one, at Opera Music, Snake Maltings Concert Hall Productions, as it is now. And I did that, springboarded from that to my first admin assistant job, which was for Britten Symphonia. And I did that for about 2.5 years. It was concerts assistant. All those skills that I had administratively just served me well, and the begging bowl that I went to Opera Music with, just saying, please, I would like to read that letter back because it was pretty pathetic, So, just help me. I would work for nothing. I have very strong opinions now, maybe we'll come to that, I don't know, Q&A about unpaid internships now. Certainly now I'm in a position to invite individuals to come and work for me. I feel very differently now about the begging bowl, and I would never want anyone to have to go through that process. But as I say, just to give you a quick potted history, after that point, I was at Britten Symphonia then after Opera Music for 3 years, at which point I had just done quite well at Opera Music, so I kept getting asked back to do little projects, every few months I'd do a week or something, or a weekend where I would just freelance for them. And because I'd made the tea really well, I think that's the thing, don't underestimate who's watching you when you're in that valuable job. So long as you're getting paid, if you make the tea really well, someone will remember that. But yes, after Britten Symphonia, after a couple of years, I got a little bit tired and ready for the next challenge. It was at Spitalfields Music. I did 2 festivals with them over a period of a year. Then Opera Music again for a paid maternity cover job, working for the Britten Peers Young Artists Programme as their orchestra manager. And then I got headhunted to go back to Britten Symphonia after that as the concerts director. And I think it was a process of given myself an overview of several organisations, some that I really wanted to work for, some that I perhaps felt was more of a necessity in order to kind of get on. But it was a very good exercise in actually thinking, this organisation has all the qualities I want in my career, from my career. I need these things to get career satisfaction. So that's sort of, I can give you a little bit of information about what my kind of day consists of if you want, but perhaps I'll let Sam talk now. For a little while.
I will.
You're gonna,
I won't
gonna
name them.
Oh,
That's good. At the front. So I was thinking about this on the way on the train up, about what it is I say, and I realised I have no messages or any idea how I got to where I got to today. So I thought probably it's best if I just give you a quick summation of kind of what happened. This could be like a bit like a Justin Bieber autobiography. I keep adding to it every single year. So I start at the beginning, I suppose, not the very beginning, we don't have that much time. But at York, it was very similar to James actually. So I was a performer. I came here and I had these mixed feelings about being a singer or something like that, and also realised quite quickly that I just wasn't very good. So in comparison to my colleagues who were just exceptionally hardworking and passionate about it and putting in the hours, and I realised that it wasn't just because I was being lazy, it was just because it wasn't something that I just wasn't as excited by it. So for me, the Springboard was producing concerts. It ended up being a thing of I quite liked the behind-the-scenes scenarios. I quite liked the terrifying nature that I was going to lose lots of money. And so it started with me, my third year dissertation was to put together a lost Monteverdi opera and take it to the Edinburgh Fringe for 3 weeks, which was exciting. It's exciting because I had to persuade 18 of my fellow friends to go for free and to pay me money, in fact, so that we could all go do it together. And off the back of that, it just ended up being quite successful. We did this run at the Edinburgh Fringe we had about an 80, 90 cap venue for 3 weeks, ended up with 60 people coming in, and it gave me a massive springboard about just how much I enjoyed the whole process, which was just like the marketing. How is it? And it's a very simple thing. How do I get you to part with your money to come to my concert, which I have completely invented and might be rubbish? And that really excited me. And so, as James says yet again, there was this Whittington thing of just like, okay, I'm from Norfolk, and there was no way I was going back there. So I said, so very swiftly on, I was like, okay, London, why not? That seems good. The train line goes there, I'll go there as well. And just moved in with some people I'd never met before, which was, thankfully I got very lucky that they were actually extraordinary people. All Northern Irish, which was very exciting. And I remember, the only thing that I remember was, it was actually, I joke about Norfolk, but for me the fear was actually going back home. So I remember signing for the lease on the house with everyone else an hour before my job interview, just so that I had this thing in the back of my mind that there was no retreat. And at this job interview, bizarrely, it was for an orchestra called the Oxford Philharmonic, that I'm sure James knows quite well. And they're an invisible organisation, so don't go and work for them. And they're crazy, and they're run by a Greek philanthropist who is nuts and thinks he can conduct, and he can't. He is probably the best person I've ever met at raising money and making people think he can conduct. It's a skill not to be underestimated. And to get to the nuts and bolts of it, so I was an administration assistant at £15,000 a year. Those of you that can do your maths in London on a rent of £650 a month, you can start to do the maths. It avoids evading lots of tax if you really want to know. Just joke. You're picking me up on. But so yeah, as a result of this, it was then I was still doing concerts and producing concerts in London at the same time, and rent out a church called St George's in Hanover Square, completely on my own back. And there was a budget I worked out of £12,000 which I needed to raise in order to put this concert on. And I had a friend at the time who came here to do some concerts at Methodist harpsichordist called Johannes Fahani, and I said to him, hey, do you want to come and do some concerts with me. Somehow he said yes, and I had to pay him everything. And yeah, it was the experience again. I had to find the money, so you had to literally go cap in hand to do sponsorship and promise those sorts of things. And I lost most of it. It was great. It was really terrifying. But yet again, and I was just at the same time that kind of happened, I then realised that I didn't want to do that by myself because I was just going to keep losing money. So I devoted my time to this organisation, and the guy above me, the manager, my manager basically left after 2 months of me being in the job, and I ended up being the fixer for the Oxford Philharmonic. And to go back to this crazy Greek guy who raises lots of money, and he did it very successfully, he raised so much money and managed to become an ensemble in residence at Oxford University, despite not having a professional orchestra, which was pretty fantastic. In fact, they actually steal most of James's plays to put on this orchestra. And, well, everyone's, don't they? Yeah, so, but he had such a large budget that I began working with some incredible artists. So I was booking Lang Lang and Nicola Benedetti and Nigel Kennedy and Maxim Vengerov and even Vasily Gergiev at one point as well. And they would just come to Oxford, and my job was basically to look after them and make sure they didn't do anything too nefarious in the case of Lang Lang. Story of Chinese underage girls is another story for sorry. And then, so then we have, and so anyway, as a result of that, I went to a music conference. The reason why I do this chronologically is because, as I said, I can't work out a message from this, so I feel if I am in the detail, perhaps maybe you can work something out from it. I went to a conference, which is something you should all look up. It's called the International Artists and Managers Association Conference, IAMA for short. And that's essentially, it's like the classical music, I'm trying to think of a better name, it's kind of like a hub, really, isn't it? It's where the wheeling and dealing goes on for all the orchestras and agents selling everything. So you have a new artist, a new emerging artist, and you're a budding agent, you will go to this, and people like James will be there, basically looking for what everyone's trying to sell. And it's just like, who's cool, who's up and coming, where's this all happening? And I knew no one at this conference whatsoever, and to make matters worse, it was in Budapest in Hungary, and I had so little money from the Oxford Philharmonic that I had to go by train, which was interesting. Anyway, but all of this led to this, like, yet again, this feeling of desperation of just like, okay, I have to do something. And I literally just limited myself to a group of people that I've never met before, and turned out were an agency called IMG, and someone else you should look up, IMG Artists, who were just one of a big, super agency group. And off the back of that, I got offered an assistant job, very keen to escape crazy Greek people. I eagerly took it, and then my job suddenly becoming an assistant artist manager, which is a routine for a lot of people in the industry, is to do internships and then become an assistant at one of these agencies. And then my salary raised to the princely sum of £19,000 a year. It was very exciting. I just feel it's helpful because it's quite good when you think about budgeting or even going to London in the first place. And so I became an assistant to lots of conductors, and I worked with lots of classical conductors who basically kind of taught me the ropes and introduced me to lots of orchestras. And it was kind of around this sort of time that actually James and I started talking about things, because of course we don't have to sell to various orchestras. My remit was to look up to the UK. And then I was at IMG for 5 years. I actually said to myself I was going to be there for 6 months, and then I was going to do something else. I almost got fired. That was quite interesting. I always got fired because, again, I was just being I wasn't concentrating on the detail enough. And that's a really, really crucial thing. As artists and artistic temperaments, we always have a grand vision. We always think to ourselves, I'm going to phrase this piece in this way, and I'm going to do a recital program that looks like this. And all of that is an artistic vision. And in a way, sometimes you completely miss the absolute detail of absolutely everything that goes on. And for me, my massive learning curve was realizing the devil is in the detail. Anyway, but as a result of me overcoming that, in a way, I then ended up looking after a particular strange genre called film with live orchestra. I don't know if anyone here has heard of this or anything like that. essentially what it is, it's great. It's where you get a license from a Hollywood studio to do a film such as Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones, and then you get some technical people to do things that I don't quite understand, and you end up with a version where you can have the orchestra playing the music track to the dialogue and effects. And essentially, you've got the orchestra playing the track along to the film and have it. And it was kind of a time that there was lots of people talking about how they were best going to like engage with the audiences. Lots of orchestras booked this. And so I just ended up in a slightly strange position of no one wanted to do this genre of music. And I said, oh, Andrew, I'll do that. That sounds fun. Happy to try and lose some more money on your behalf this time. Yeah, it just ended up being very successful, and I managed to win the account at the time, just because out of necessity. I didn't really do that much, I suppose, to the Royal Albert Hall to provide their filming concert series. And then off the back of that, I got invited to join the Royal Albert Hall in August of last year, which point, because they needed someone that was going to essentially create content. The Royal Albert Hall at the moment just does the proms and its third-party hires, and so Adele will go and book it for 5 nights, but they don't actually produce any of their own stuff. So I was asked to come in and head up the team on that. So yes, this is kind of chronological. Oh my god, I can't even find the words. But let's go through things step by step, just because I think the whole thing for me, if there was anything, was there was just a bit of, there was always a desperation and a keenness, and I was always very, very keen to just keep trying new things all the time and not go back to Norfolk. And that is the message today. Not straight
Okay, I'm a dry story here. This is the finance story, and I'm going to hit some hard decisions to you. Does anybody have any idea how much the Arts Council pumps into the music, well, into the arts in general every year? How much money? Give me my that. Okay, it's £500 million every year. It's a huge volume of money. So there's some really big businesses coming up. All our arts organisations have big business. They need people with professional skills. They've got a whole load of people coming through, music graduates, theatre graduates, working as you guys have done from the way up. But they need a lot of people with a lot of skills and experience in the commercial sector. So I, music graduate like you, sat here, well not in here, but in Edinburgh 20 years ago, freaking out about what on earth I was going to do. I'd done a degree that was very heavy in community music. I'd done placements for War Child in Mostar, setting up the Pavarotti Music School there. Really, really wanted to go into music therapy, and you'll probably, a lot of you will be going to the section later on today about music therapy. But I, like these guys, needed some money. And you often need a lot more money to do some more studying. That wasn't an option for me. I needed to get a job, and I needed financial independence. So I spoke to the careers service at university, and if you get to do that, please do. It can calm you down, it can make you look at your different options. To do music here at York, you've probably got some pretty good A-levels. These are really transferable skills that you've built up. Those will apply to the industry, but they will apply to other sectors as well, because what you could have got into probably many other courses at the university here as well as music. So you're very qualified. You can transfer those skills to other life experiences. So I chose to become an accountant. So I qualified in Leeds. I did a 3-year proper working on the job training at a firm in Leeds, training alongside students from Ernst & Young, KPMG, going into different businesses week in, week out, learning about how they work. I audited the NHS pension scheme, a big oil company, small businesses that make sinks, sell cars, all that stuff. Learning about everyday companies and how they operate. And then when I finished that in 3 years, I stayed on for a bit longer. Then I did the whole thing, went and had kids, took time out. Then I realised I needed to get back into the music industry that I wanted to do. the careers service had said to me, quite rightly, you're going to have a really long career. You don't have to worry. That first job doesn't have to be that crucial path. Don't beat yourself up if that first job that you get isn't with LSO, British and Boone or whatever. It's okay. So calm me down. But I thought, no, I need to get back into it now. It's a really great opportunity, having time out and having kids. So I applied to be a governor at Leeds College of Music. I was only 29 at the time. At that point, it wasn't that long since I graduated, so I thought my relevance, I'd qualified as an accountant, I'd worked in Leeds as well, and it wasn't, my memory of being a music graduate was quite recent, so I thought what a great opportunity to be a governor. And I'm still a governor there and now. The institution's been through various things along the way, and I'm still there. And it's through the networking that I met a lot of people in the industry, and met Dalma, who runs the National Centre for Early Music. Therefore, I then got the job of finance manager at the National Centre for Early Music. And the job has grown as the organisation has changed over time, and I'm now director for finance and operations. So I day-to-day manage the finance. I set the 3-year budgets for the organisation, do the applications to the Arts Council, write numerous policies and plans for the Arts Council about equality, about diversity, about digital, about environmental. The Arts Council have lots of objectives that we need to, if we're going to be looking after their money and delivering arts for the nation, that we need to fulfil their own goals. So there's a lot of creative writing going on. I also write applications for Creative Europe projects. So we received our first project in 2013. That was €60,000, and since then we've had a 4-year project that we're on about €150,000, part of a massive European project that we work with some partners in France on, and we've just this week submitted our second one, so feeling a bit tight. I manage the box office, or I still take responsibility for the box office, HR, IT, you name it. We're a small organisation, so I've got a whole load of things that report into me. So my message is music organisations are responsible for a lot of money now. Arts Council funding probably accounts for a third, maybe, of their total income. They have a lot of donations, lots of fundraising, and a lot of commercial enterprise within those organisations. So it's important, valuable business. So you think more broadly about the skills that you've got, you probably can do a whole load of other things. So think bigger, don't panic so much about that first job. These guys have shown them multiple different ways that you can get into it. And hopefully some of you maybe thought that something I've said today will resonate a bit.
So, questions. There are so many different facets to it: artist management, venue management, and the management of other people's money, which seems to be a large part of it. Since you say about the 30% or a third of it, that used to be the perceived model, didn't it?
Yeah.
For a venue or a festival, a venue-based festival, a third of the money that you'd be dealing with was from public funds, a third of it was private that you raised, takes us back to our fundraising chat this morning, and a third of it was from ticket income. And to what extent do all three of you see that being squeezed now?
Well, very much relevant, Britain Symphonium, I would say, in exactly the same model too. And I think we are currently in this age of austerity where people are perhaps considering which classical music events they may go to. They're being a lot more choosy about that concert-going experience, and maybe only going to one concert per month, whereas previously they might have been going to 3, and over a period of time. That does gradually chip away at box office revenue. Philanthropy as well is increasingly more difficult than it used to be, so getting people to contribute more, securing those small trust foundations, that income that has actually been so plentiful in the past is now very much streamlined and shared over a large number of organisations who are all competing for basically the same pot. unless an organisation has a particularly commercial strand. And that's actually, it's worth saying that Sam's in a slightly different position at IMG and the Royal Albert Hall in both being commercial entities, whereas our organisations are charities. It is quite frustrating sometimes when you feel like you put an awful lot of work into an application, even though my area is producing. We're such a small team. You're often working on putting together a funding application together. It is frustrating that you don't get that money because someone else is perhaps doing something very similar, but a funder has just agreed to grant them that money. It is a competitive environment.
Yeah. The third model still stands, and there's increasing pressure to show how resilient an organisation needs to be. That Arts Council third, you are less reliant on. That should that end, should the Arts Council can cut it year on year or in year. If the economy takes another dive, they may cut 5% on you with no notice in the end, and that can mean the project's not happening. It can mean your reserves being eaten into. It could mean no pay rises, lack of recruitment. So you have to have built in a little bit of a buffer, but you're not allowed to have too much money because then you can't fundraise. So you play a creative game. You have to be clever.
I think it's as creative balancing the books as it is performing on stage. I know that might sound ridiculous actually, but I think certainly the organisations I've worked for is that there is a democracy in that the musicians, visiting artists, perhaps less than the visiting artists, but certainly the membership or the frequent users of whatever venue or situation, they have an enormous amount of respect for the administration. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd do it if it was just so subservient that we would just constantly,
That's interesting about the whole creative thing as well. I did a tour with Fagiolini just before Christmas with the Scottish Ensemble. They're a fantastic string ensemble. And what was noticeable about them is the wonderful relationship they have with their management, and how keen the whole management are. And that's three people, isn't it? And the chief executive was also selling the CDs in the interval and that kind of thing, checking the toilets were clean. That's something I think we probably all recognise from the arts business. But it really made a difference to the players to know that their management was in good hands. So if you think, management can be a bit dry, you will. Stephen Maddox, CBSO, he posts on Facebook all the time. He's following his orchestra around, going to their concerts. You're not just sitting in a venue, writing up the tax forms. You're getting out there and seeing stuff. If you're based with an ensemble as well, and there's a lot of respect for the musicians from you there.
Yeah, and I'd also point out that it's a great strength to have people that are performers in a management role, and I say that not just in music administration, but administration broadly. The reason why music administration is so important to have performers of some degree is because you need to be able to relate to all of your performers. The United States have a very awful situation at the moment. It's largely cleared up now, where orchestras go bankrupt. And the reason is because the orchestras, the players are so heavily unionised that, for example, Metropolitan New York, if you're a rank and file violinist, so that means you are so far back that the conductor can't even see you. You get paid $96,000 a year, plus your pension and everything else on top of that. And of course, when you've then got a bill that's running into eight figures quite easily, you suddenly end up with a massive division between management, who don't understand the players' needs, and the players who feel that the management doesn't understand them, and vice versa. And in these cases, the strongest arbitrators and the people that are saving these scenarios are people that actually really empathise with the fact that, at the end of the day, performers don't know when their next paycheck is coming from. And you really, really need to empathise with the fact that, it's a stressful situation to be a performer. And so, I think it's very important.
I'll pick up on something that Sam said actually about having a performance kind of orientated brain, or at least aspirations maybe to be a performer going into an administrative role. I think do so with caution and awareness that it might sometimes feel frustrating. So I've seen this many times in different organisations where someone has been in, say, a first administrative role and really, really wanted to be a performer. And being that close to it can be quite frustrating, because that's the thing, that's part of the joy of it. And if you've never really wanted to be a performer, great, and you don't have any aspirations to be, but when you're that close to it, and you're sending them on stage, and then having to step back into the wings, I've seen that prove quite frustrating to some, so be aware.
How would you recommend kind of overcoming that? Like you said, you've kind of seen that kind of aspect of almost kind of you want to take the place of a performer. Is it just kind of making your peace with the job that you have, or sorry, quite a tricky question.
I personally, as I say, I don't think it's ever been an aspiration of mine. But perhaps my advice would be to ensure that you're actually aiming or targeting organisations that you admire artistically. Because actually working so closely with artists like that, whether be they performers, composers, conductors, actually even wider connections and colleagues like agents and publishing houses and venues and all of those facets. I think if you enjoy working with people, you probably reconcile it, because there are so many things about working with others and for others that are similar to performance and events that actually you feel like you're performing every day anyway.
Let's not forget, you may not be going on stage to take part in professional performance, but there's a good chance you'll be performing at some other level, whether it's local orchestra or very good, what they call semi-pro choir, which means amateur, not paid, but of a very good level. So there are always opportunities to perform. We talked a lot about how to be a good one. Can we talk about what sort of thing, how do you become one? Because here they are, all age 19, 20, 21, thinking, I'd like to get into that.
A performer or an administrator?
No, administrator.
How would you get into
Yeah, well,
I did it actually the old-fashioned way. I wrote letters to every single organisation in London, quite literally. And I think, I'm glad they didn't get together because it would have looked like I was stalking people. But it was, and by that I mean physical letters as well. I don't mean emails, and I think the really strong thing about that is you just see what everything is. In terms of giving you some actual really key points, and this is just from where I come from, look at the agencies. The agencies, there are three big ones, well, four actually.
Artist agencies.
Yes, these are artist agencies. Different from pop agencies. Pop agencies are quite similar. There's a couple of big pop agencies called ITV, which is International Talent Booking. They basically look after everyone you've ever heard of. United Talent Agents, it's UTA. And then the big classical ones, which of course, the skill sets that we've got, it's quite easy for us to get into those. IMG, as I said, a company called Intermusica, another company called Aston Holt, and then there's Hazard Chase as well, which is actually based out in Cambridge and London. The good thing about, as I said, I'm biased. The reason why I like agencies is because you see everything. You see absolutely all facets of the entire industry. And a lot of, it can be said that there's been a lot of performers have actually come out of being either assistant artist managers because they can see how the record industry works off the back of it. They can see how the orchestras work, how funding works. And they all run internships because at the end of the day, as they are commercial enterprises, they are trying to screw you over. They would like you to come and work for them for free for a short amount of time. But that is such a great way of going in because you can go in and do an internship for 2 months or whatever it is, and then straight away you can then get the assistant jobs on the ladder.
This regularly happens, I would say, because if you go in there and it turns out that you are reliable and you'll remember to do what you've been told to do, and you don't book someone on the wrong flights, that's a good way to lose a job quite fast. Then you're like, and that can happen really quite fast. But I've been having just to join this up with the real world and conversations we were having this morning about the SIB Students Internship Bureau. The university is bringing out this thing now called the placement year, which allows you to take a year out, generally your third year before what would then become your fourth year. This is a new thing at York, it's only just been announced, to go and do something like that. But Ambrose Field and I have had a conversation with careers, And they don't think, or we don't think that's a very good thing for us, because most of the people that are going to be doing that in the music world, and stop me and buy one if I'm wrong, are unlikely to be offering enough money to live on, and certainly not up to the level of about 16,000, 17,000 a year, which the university wanted to cover. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be better to be doing these SIBs, student internship bureau things, where you're doing something for a month, or a couple of months, or the summer, or maybe even taking a term out. That's a bit more awkward, but it's possible. And when I talked to my manager, for example, to Lily Purcell, of Perseus, who used to be at Hazard Chase, she said, yes, I could see offering someone a job like that for 3 months. If I had to pay them too much, they'd end up making coffee and photocopy. But if I wasn't really paying them, they could accompany me to my meetings at the BBC, orchestras, venues, and they would learn an incredible amount. And if they became reliable, who knows, they'd be at the top of my list when I was coming to look for a part-time work for me in Cambridge. Cherry.
The last 2 weeks I've been sifting through CVs of music graduates, which has been utterly enlightening, because none of you talk about your music degree. It's heartbreaking. You all talk about, all these CVs have been talking about, quite rightly, the work that you do to support yourself in the holidays and during term time, but barely any have spoken about the passion that you have for music in your degree, the modules that you've chosen, why you've chosen them. Where you have, it brings a CV to life. It's really easy to get very bored reading CVs, and it's saddening, because we've all been there. We all keep our CVs relevant. It's really important, but you've got to make them stand out and be passionate about what you're studying.
Do you remember the personal statement for your UCAS form?
Yeah,
and being coached by your sixth form teachers about that? I read them because of all you coming up for audition interview and all that. And we're not just looking at, I'm very interested in my history and all that, but it's those are the things that you've done outside that as well. We need to know about you as a person. And also, just saying I'm passionate about doesn't necessarily read. We need to read between the lines. We want to try to get to know you as a person. Yeah.
And often it's the tiny thing that gets the sparks of thought that you remember a person from their CV. It could be that I know it sounds mad, but there was somebody who was treasurer of the Quidditch Society. And things like that, just you think, well, that person's got a bit of something about it. So do really love what you do, really get into it and show off.
And I've likewise looked through a lot of CVs, and it's true that there is such a thing as a charismatic CV. And you read it, you go, it might actually not necessarily contain not all of the boxes may have been ticked, but if it just has that little bit of sparkle.
That's interesting, because you can compare that with writing. Have you seen a musical theatre CV or an actor's CV? It's unbelievably formal. I mean, there is a particular way of writing. Did this show, did this show. Frankly, no one reads them except an agent who needs to know how. If you're writing a CV for a programme, it needs to be short, one paragraph, and it needs to be readable. So that thing that Paul Tyke was saying in the 1245 thing about fundraising, I wouldn't hire anyone who couldn't write an essay. He doesn't mean write an academic essay, he means convince and be interesting. Fagiolini's CV used to start, the name Fagiolini has been mispronounced and misspelled all over the world, which sounds comic, but at the same time it says we've been all over the world, and throws you in some character straight away. And if you're reading a lot of something that is going to say, I've done this, and I've done this, and I did, as Cherry says, after about 20 minutes of that is, and then suddenly, I once swam naked through Hyde Park. That's not just a big word out, but something that is, well, hang on, what did I just read? Very gently is going to be something that is going to keep people reading. The guy, Greg Brown, who does all our filming, he ends his films like that. If you look at nearly all of the Fagiolini films up on our YouTube site, at the end there's a sort of off-cut, 7 seconds at the end. You think, what? That shouldn't be in there, and it's for people who got to the end. But yeah, so it is still personal. We don't just want to know that you're tremendously dull if you're going into arts admin, because that won't actually enable you to sell anything. Because in the end, arts admin is about both buying and selling. And if you're selling, you have to be persuasive and interesting and tell a story.
Expect to negotiate, I think, and it's so interesting to hear you say about internships and supported ones, because even if you find yourself in an unpaid internship, and I've got strong feelings about long-term ones at least, because I think it creates a bit of a false economy, especially in charitable organisations, but if you're in a short-term one, network the shit out of it if you can, because, excuse me, but it will serve you, it will pay dividends if you actually meet as many people as possible and ensure that you're not just making team photocopying, because you could do that anywhere, you could do that here, but make sure you actually, and hold them, and call them out on it if you're in an internship and you're only just doing this, because it's not worth it.
I think it's kind of on that stream. I've always felt like kind of having a unpaid internship, particularly for a couple of months, almost feels like a step backwards. Like you've been paying £9,000 for a degree, you've got that degree, and then you're going back to unpaid work. And so, as you're further down the line than we are, is there any kind of way that you can kind of isolate that feeling? Actually, this is the first step upwards.
Yeah, well, I guess there is one, there's one slightly brutal fact, I suppose, is that yes, you have paid £9,000 to agree, but so have several million people. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean it more if it's more like, oh my God, I've done 3 years and now I'm not doing anything. It should more be like, I've done 3 years, next step. And it's very much more of a positive way of thinking rather than just like, rather than it being a trough or something like that. It should be right, where am I going to next?
And if you can handle the jobs that are given to you and you can be reliable, they will give you more.
Absolutely. I mean, I will say, when I left IMG, I think 70% of the assistants, so there was 10 there in the division that I worked in, were all interns within the last 2 years. And I've done 8 weeks, a month, 2 months. And the thing is, they were just like, the job comes up, and they're like, oh my God, we're going to have to apply. We're going to have to actually advertise this. That costs money. Put it on websites. Actually, she's not bad. Should we just get her to do it? And then automatically.
There are legal issues here.
Yes. Just going to put the equality action plan. And it's a big no-no.
You do have to advertise, obviously.
You do have to advertise. We do. All organisations need to work really hard now to spread their pool that they're applying, that they're taking applications from. We don't do it well enough at the moment, and we really need to work hard. It's difficult enough because on the whole, music graduates are of the sort. You're generally quite privileged to be in this position. We need to widen that, so we will be looking even further because we've got our own objectives set by the Arts Council that we then set as our own. So we do need to go broadly. Unpaid internships on long term is absolutely the best.
Yes,
I couldn't have done one.
I was only just able to do them, as I said earlier, because of the roof and bed and board at mums and dads. That was really the only way, and I certainly could never have done it. And it is this kind of diversity and equality issue, which is a separate one altogether, which actually extends to the orchestra and plays as well. That the Arts Council are asking you to tick a lot of boxes. That when you look across your orchestra, it's 35 middle-aged white men. This is not terribly representative of the populace. But I would say there are other ways, without wanting to dwell on the internship thing, there are other ways to actually get in and gain a little bit of experience without actually, for want of a better word, whoring yourself out in the same way. It's perhaps by volunteering at a festival I found that very useful. Dartington, Trogs.
So Dartington and Trogs were here this morning. We had a presentation from Rachel Wilkinson. If you don't know about the Dartington Summer School, her presentation will be on video in the next few days. It's a summer school in the south of England. They have Trogs, which are production assistants. She referred to the modern term production assistant. We all think of them as Trogs. And then there's stewardships as well. And I also happen to have, in this piece of paper, internship from the Rydale Festival, which I read out this morning. The Rydale Festival, which is relatively local, is looking for a small number of interns to gain hands-on experience of all aspects of festival life. It's only a couple of weeks, but you will actually meet people, you will meet artists, you will meet the top level, because you don't generally, maybe now you don't generally have reams of admin people. It's not like going to the BBC and you're surrounded by 20 assistants who come and say, right, I'm going to take you up to the next floor. You'll find that the main music director is only one person away, so you're working with these people and you gain a lot of insights from that, and it goes on your CV. I've done this already. And he's looking for current York students.
We'll be doing the same in a few months' time for the summer festival. and you'll often get to go and meet artists at airports, bring them back, talk to them, set them into the hotels, take them from place to place, get them water, but you become their person that they look to as their sort of little mentor in this country.
And they feed back to the people at the top.
They do. It's so useful. There are a few, and I've jotted these down, that I did the Hess student scheme at Open Music for the festival. That was fantastic, a 2-week intensive, very similarly structured placement. The sort of thing, if you're actually doing another day job at your local National Trust cafe serving cakes and tea, you can actually take a couple of weeks out maybe to go and do that as a little holiday, because even though you're working hard, it's pretty amazing.
But it can also fit in with one of our other people talking about this morning. If you decide to have a year off, if you come here straight from school and you decide you want a year off before going into further study or deciding what the hell it is you actually want to do, planning your year with an internship here, a little bit of cake selling on the side, sit cake selling, that can be a part of a year as well. It may not be a long-term plan, and the whole long-term internship I think is absolutely iniquitous, but it can be part of it.
We always point out that in every other industry you are kind of expected to have done summer schools in your degree. And music administration shouldn't really be any different.
But back to my presentation, I think don't panic about that first job if you don't get those internships, if you don't get those first music admin jobs. Go and work for a big marketing ad agency. Go and work in a law firm. Go and work in a fancy firm. Go and work in a company. You will learn, especially in the big corporations, you will learn how big companies work. You will learn skills that you can then teach and subsume into the organisation that you do end up working for. And they will really value that experience.
And you know that this is happening here and now. Those emails you ignore because they're not the ones that have to be dealt with by tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock from me about careers, and especially as I'm meant to be on research leave at the moment, the ones that will come directly from careers or from Catherine's office. They're telling you about companies coming into the university. Now, it might be Google. You think, oh, Google, that's going to be techie. They won't be looking for tech. They're looking for arts and humanities graduates who are good at talking to people. Look at Matthew, who came in and talked this morning. English graduate, only graduated 6 months ago. He just gave an off-the-cuff presentation about the thing that he now teaches about, which is something he probably knew bugger all about 12 months ago. But he was good at talking to people. Being good at talking to people is a huge saleable skill. Yeah. Being able to communicate. We probably wouldn't be having that. I'm really going to massively... I probably wouldn't be having the same sort of conversation if we were standing in front of a load of computer science undergraduates at the moment. They would have other skills. But maybe being able to communicate generally, as well as a large group of music students, probably wouldn't be the same thing. Yeah. So please read those communications and go and look at them and go and meet the employers.
And don't think that because you're music graduates you won't get it, because you will. If you write a CV, you already will.
And there are leaflets about that going on at the moment. Sorry, go on.
How easy is it to get a job in the north rather than like in London?
I think it's a great question. And to be honest, I was quite conscious that when I said Dick Whittington thing, I was going to do a little gazebo on the end of it about how it's not just London. I'll just reel off a couple of cities. Manchester, 6 international fantastic venues. Birmingham, yet again 3, including an arena. Leeds, you've got Leeds Town Hall, you've got Opera North as well. Going up to Newcastle, you've got the Sage, still in my view probably one of the best venues in the UK. Yep. Going up towards Edinburgh, you've just got a whole host of them. Glasgow, fantastic. And my favourite venue in the whole of the UK is called the Old Fruit Market, which is managed by the City Council in Glasgow. Yeah, again, 2 venues up there. Glasgow.
How many orchestras?
2 orchestras.
Well, plus the Scottish, 3 plus the Scottish.
Edinburgh, 3. Newcastle, 1. Birmingham, 2. There's also the Royal Ballet in Birmingham. It is vast. And the thing is that you're right. In a way, we bypass it, and we shouldn't. And there's just, especially now. And to be honest, this has only really happened in the last 5 years. I would say, it's been a massive boost. It's just like these arts organisations are now actually providing for a way that London never has done. Because of course, there's still that amazing argument. Why is it that my parents are paying taxes to fund people to go and see the opera in London? It's just. So I think it just. That's what you should be doing. So yeah, I would say very easy.
We've got a few minutes left. More questions? questions. I mean, all this has been about going and working for someone. Having done the doing it myself route, that's another issue where just about every single thing you've ever learnt comes to play in setting your own thing up, gradually starting to employ people. The way I worked was entirely commercial, so I could never spend more than I brought in. I didn't invest to do this anymore, and I'm not at all sure it was the best way of doing it. And when I listened to, it was a way of doing it, when I listened to the fundraising talk this morning and the help available from New Start over in Heslington there, and the way they were even telling me things about my own business that I hadn't thought of, you don't have to do it on your own. And here, in any case, is a brilliant way to start off and be able to talk with other people about it. God, where was my university? Yes, you have a question.
I was wondering if you could possibly just kind of outline what you do kind of day to day in your jobs.
We talked about our career history, but you could actually kind of give a box of day.
A minute each.
I write budgets all the time. Budgets for different things. I write big budgets every 3 years. I do monthly budgets. I do project budgets. I negotiate. I hassle artists to send invoices in because they forget. I hassle agents to send invoices in for the wrong amounts. I have to be BDI for everything. I'm doing tiny stuff to big stuff all the time, so it's pretty varied. To my lovely interns. Making the coffee, I do that as well. Sometimes do my own photocopying. You do everything.
I think a typical day in the life of James is probably after crying of my emails for about half an hour, because there's usually quite a lot of them. There's quite a lot of traffic. Now I might be picking up the phone to artists themselves, composers, conductors, sort of talking about maybe mid-term planning. The short term, I had a small team, so there were 3. There's an orchestra fixer part-time and 2 full-time members of staff, an orchestra manager who's dealing with the ops, and the concert assistant and librarian who picks up everything else. But we'll be devising those mid-term projects, whilst also budgeting for and looking at the feasibility and feasibility studies for future projects. Sometimes devising them artistically, but not necessarily leading on that aspect, but helping facilitate those sides of it. Liaising with people like Sam, maybe over prospective concerts. I'm the sort of go-to person if someone wants to book the orchestra for a tour or any engagement in the UK for that matter, and abroad. So yes, I mean, the other aspect of it we haven't touched much on is policy, which is a whole other facet of the industry not represented here in the union, the Association of British Orchestras and other bodies. So many different organisations actually that we come into contact with regularly. And then part of what I do is assess and set what are visiting artists, but also crucially what the musicians themselves are paid in conjunction with policy.
So I look after a team at the Royal Albert Hall whose job is to deliver 700 events a year. So I divide things up into weeks, usually rather than days. So 3 days a week is literally just meetings. And a lot of that is literally 9 to 5. And a lot of that is there's a lot of feedback stuff or brainstorming. That's people have ideas or they have questions about how things should be run. And that's me then basically giving my opinion on it and saying, I think we should do this, and like this, and you should follow up that, and do that. And then 2 days a week is work, like actual work. Is where.
I know what your job is.
Yeah, is actually working properly and actually trying to get in quite early to actually get through on stuff. And it's planning mostly. Planning and internal politics are my 2 big things. Because there are 400 people that work at the Royal Albert Hall, and I have to make sure that they all get along to do the events that we want them to do.
I think I'm pretty much going to leave it there, but very, very grateful to you all for coming in. Thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting.